What do you do when you're done?
Illustrations by me.
So someone asked a question about what do you do with the watercolor when you're done? They're new to watercolor. Do you just stick it up on the wall? Do you have to do something to it? Is there something happen? Do you have to cover it, seal it? What do you do? So today I'm going to show you, now I'm not showing you how you should seal watercolor. I'm showing you how I seal watercolor. Everybody does it different. There's a lot of different ways to do it, but I do want to point out who is this. Gertie the Duck pointed out that you need to be careful. I'm going to use cold wax. That's what I use. And I'll show you how to apply it. But Gertie said, you got to be careful with the cold wax if you use colored pencils. Sometimes the cold wax melts the colored pencils and you can ruin the whole piece. So if you use watercolor and then you put colored pencils on top, you got to be careful with that. That's a great point, Gertie. Thank you for that. And let me show you what I do now. I'll do a little top-down thing, show you that, and we'll get into a regular painting. Okay, so this is how I do it. The first thing you do is you want to get one of these pads. Now these, it doesn't have to be this particular pad. I will try to find a link for these. I don't know if they're going to be on Amazon or not. I got these so long ago, I just have not gone through them at all. But anyway, it's a lint-free wipe. It's used for like camera lenses, camera equipment, that kind of thing. Lint-free, that's the most important thing. You do not want it falling apart on your product there. You do not want that. So these are nice and smooth. They're very soft and they're lint-free. That's very important. Then I use the Gambling Coal Wax. I know there's a couple of other ones you can use. I use the Gambling Coal Wax is what I've always used. And I bought this years ago and I have not really used much at all in here. It does not take a lot. So this is something that I have to refinish. Now, you do have to reapply it every once in a while. It's wax. It will eventually dissolve, but really it preserves whatever you put it on, and it makes it so that, like me, I'm a moron, sometimes I'm walking around, I spit on things when I'm talking. As you hear how loud I talk. You probably hear me spit half the time. But anyway, you want to make sure that you cover this so that if it gets wet, if something water gets on it, someone spits on it, whatever, it doesn't dissolve. This was done with watercolor and gouache, mostly gouache, and then there was a little bit in the wing here and the top of the head that was watercolor. But so you want to wrap it around your finger like that. Put some on there like that. There's not a lot. You don't have to get like a ridiculous amount. There's just a little bit on there, okay? And then you're just going to kind of roll it in a circle. Yeah, let me get that a little bit tighter on my finger, and that may be a problem. Okay, so then you want to roll it like a circle over the top of the thing. And you notice it's not reactivating the watercolor. Yay, that's wonderful. That's what you want. You do not want to reactivate the watercolor. And you just keep reapplying it and applying it until it's all worked in. At first, it's going to look like there's a little film over it. Don't worry. That's going to go away. And the only thing that is coming off a little bit is the dust that was on there. So it's been around for a while, this painting. So that was a mess. Okay, so let me fold this back over and now use another corner of it and just keep wiping it over. Now, like I said, this is going to preserve it just fine. There's nothing wrong. You don't want to push hard. I'm not pushing at all. It's just a very, very light touch on here. And I just go over the rest of the surface too. I have some watercolor ground that coated this whole thing, so it can take the little bit of stuff that I'm putting on here. And it's very, very light touch. You don't have to dig in at all. And there you go. Now, if you looked at this at an angle, or you can't, I can see where the wax is. I can see that there was a little bit of a sheen to it now. That'll dry. Once it dries, it'll be back down to like a matte kind of finish. I don't really notice, well, I don't notice anything on there. I don't notice any kind of sheen or anything on there. Once it dries completely, I usually let it sit for about 24 to 48 hours. It's wax, so for wax to dry, you know, it's a greasy substance. You want to make sure that it dries all the way, and that's fine. It'll work just fine, and that'll preserve it. It actually, when you go over it, it does bring out a little bit more brightness in the paint that was there. You see a little bit more of the detail that I put in, but it doesn't mean it's not changing what was there originally. It's just that it got old, got dirty, got dusty, and as I cleaned it up again, it just brought it back out and brings out some of that life again, so it looks like I just did it. It's wonderful. Absolutely wonderful. And I just want to point out, if you are sensitive to things, put gloves on. Put some, if you're sensitive to chemicals and things, you're going to break out or something, that's different. Now, I am, when it comes to smells, I'm very sensitive to smells. But usually, like the chemicals or whatever, the gambling coal wax does not bother me. I have no problem with it, but I will go wash my hands after I use it. But really, when I put it on, you should use gloves. I didn't use gloves. You do whatever you want. I'm telling you, you probably should wear gloves for it. All right, let's do a painting and talk about something else. Now, please stay tuned till the end because Christina sent in some artwork and I want to show it to you. So take a look at that. There's a couple things that are very interesting I'd like to point out. But before I do that, I have to point this out to you. This is the first thing I need to mention. You remember a while back I did one of these and I asked all of you, I said, do you like this with the extra detail lines put in, or do you not like it that way? Do you like it when I just leave the color and just the kind of fuzzy outline, or do you like it when I put the detail? Now, many of you said you like the detail. Many of you said, no, leave it without the detail. It gets too dark when you put the detail. It kind of covers up the color. So I didn't know exactly what to do. I always go back and forth on this one thing. So this time I decided to do one thing. Here's what I'm going to do. No detail. I'm just going to put in the outline and then put in the color and see what I can do. Let me tell you, I created this and it took every ounce of self-control I had to leave it alone and not put in the lines. I sat with this piece open in front of me for like 20 minutes. I was debating whether or not I should put in the lines or not put in the lines. And in the end, I said, well, here's the thing. I want to see how I feel in the morning. So I finished it. I put it aside. I said, I'm not going to touch it. Let's just see how I feel about it. It's been a week, and it is driving me insane. From now on, there will be no question anymore. I'm putting the lines in, at least some of the lines. Well, that could be a different experiment. Maybe I'll do that. Maybe I'll just pick and choose where I put some lines and not through the entire piece. I don't know. Do you think that's a good idea? Should I try just doing some lines and not all the lines, or maybe thicker lines and thinner lines? I don't know. But I'm going to have to put some lines in because I did not like not putting the lines in. It didn't work for me. Now this only exacerbated, that's the word it's a word a day toilet paper I have. Don't worry about that. It only exacerbated the fact that I have extremely illogical anxiety about another subject while I was creating this one. And let me tell you this, because this is a ridiculous fear. I'm a little bit more, well, I'm probably like 2/3 done with this sketchbook. And I'm already stressing out about not having another one on my shelf. Now, I know this is irrational. It's not a real fear. It's not real anxiety. I probably have another 10 more books on my shelf that I can use today if I want to. I just got so used to this book, and I'm really confident with how it works, how I use it. I like the texture, the whole thing. I like the feel of it. And I am a little anxious about not being able to reach for it anymore once I fill it up. I still have 1/3 of the book left. Do any of you ever feel like that? You like almost running out of something, you get anxiety about it even though you don't actually need it? I think that's a ridiculous feeling to have, but even more so, my brain is kind of, it fights itself. It tells me to freak out and panic. It tells me, oh, you better start worrying about that because, you know, I can think through it and rationally understand how it's a silly thing to be anxious about. But for whatever reason, the other side of my brain doesn't get the message from, and my body acts as if I'm anxious. Another problem, and I've mentioned this before, is that my brain will not let me be productive if I don't feel organized. And not having enough of something makes me feel disorganized. I feel like I'm not prepared. I'm trying to push through this, but I might break down and buy another one, just stick it on the shelf, leave it there for a while, and not even touch it. I'm just going to put it there, just so my brain can leave me alone. It's like a safety blanket or something. It's ridiculous. That's what it really is. The word is ridiculous. And I didn't need toilet paper to tell me what that word is. That's what I am. I've lived that. Now, here's something that conflicts also. If I don't buy another one right away and I get to the last page, it becomes the greatest day and the worst day at the same time. It's always like, I feel great. I completed something. Okay, completion for me is important. I love the feeling of completion and accomplishment. It feels good. That's why most of my art I finish in one session if I can. At least in like 2 or 3 sessions, and that's it. That's as far as I go. But to have two opposite emotions competing, and one is, oh, I completed this, and yet I've completed it, which causes the panic. It's exhausting. For me it is anyway. It ruins my completion day. Don't worry about that. I'll be fine. Now getting back to the first thing. I don't feel like I put a lot of work into this one. I like putting all the lines in and putting all the detail in. It makes me feel like I've accomplished something. That's another form of accomplishment. This feels half done. And like I said, because I like that feeling of completion, I don't like leaving things half done. And that's what it feels like to me. I know I put a little extra paint detail or whatever in. Just, it's not enough. I need to put more in. So I'm going to leave this one like this, even though it's going to hurt me. And I'm going to force myself to do it, but I will never do this again. I will always put the lines in, put the detail work in. I may put some in, that was what we were talking about before, but I at least have to do something. I can't just leave it like this. It's not good for me. Maybe if I tell myself it's just a sketch, maybe I'll be okay with it then, but like when I first just put in that little mushroom on the left, I was like, okay, yeah, I can just do this, and I don't need to put all the details in that mushroom or whatever. But then right away, when I got into the rest of it, I was like, oh, this is not good. I have to do some more. I have to do something. But so I'm just saying, in the future, I'll probably just play around with how much more I need to add, because I actually do like the sketchy look of the art. That's something that I really like. I've liked that ever since I first started doing this. Way back, maybe around 2016, 17, somewhere around there. And I first started doing this kind of art with the sketchy, with the, taking that ink pen and with the brush pen and just kind of scratching over the rough watercolor paper and just getting some scratchy lines. So I've been doing this for a while, and I enjoy it. I always have enjoyed it. I developed it more. I started putting in a lot more detail later on because I enjoyed that. But I did enjoy this one. It wasn't bad. It just isn't exactly to the point that I wanted it to be. That's okay. It doesn't have to be. It's in my sketchbook. It's just a sketch. I could tell myself that. We'll see how that works. Okay, so let's take a look at these by Christina. Now the first one, here's the thing that's very interesting about this. Your eye immediately goes to the center, and as you kind of wander out to look at the sides, it goes back to the center, and then you wander out to look at another side, and it goes back to the center. It kind of always pulls your eye back to the center of the page. This is very interesting, almost like you're in the bottom of a cavern looking out, and you're kind of, you fell through a hole in the middle of the desert, and now you're looking up at that hole or something. I don't know, but I'm telling you, it's just the way it is, and there's so much detail on the lines, on the sides. I think it's absolutely wonderful. So this one here on the right side, very eye-catching, and I'll tell you why. Because it could be a flower. It could be an abstract flower like a rose, and you're seeing all the layers of the petals and things like that. I don't know if that's exactly what Christina was going for, but that's what it kind of seems like to me. But it also looks like an eye in the center. So it looks like this weird creature that has an eye, and you can even make out the eyelids, because you can tell where like all the busyness is in the eyeball, and then as it gets less busy and kind of moves out, you have the kind of the eyelids and kind of holding the eye, and then it gets out even further, and you have the actual animal, and you're only seeing a section of it. It's just the eye, and it's very intriguing to me. I always like when I see artwork that it contains like an eye or something that looks like an eye, and I do that a lot in my work. You see that all the time because it's just intriguing to me. I just think it's interesting to put an eye somewhere that it doesn't belong, and you say, what is that? That shouldn't have an eye, but it does have an eye, and that's very weird. And so, but I like that. I'm drawn to it. I think that works out very well. And lastly, we have this double spread. Now, let me explain something. What this actually looks like it is to me is that there's a tree on the left, a tree on the right. The trees go up, the branches come off on the top and kind of cover over, and the bottom is just some vegetation. That's what it looks like to me. However, let me tell you what else it looks like to me. When I first looked at this, I had the picture sideways. So it kind of looked like the ocean. The blue part was not the tree, it was the ocean, and then there were like branches coming out of it, kind of going over some of the ocean or whatever, and then there was some vegetation on the side that was go off to the side. But then I looked at it further, and you know what it reminds me of? It reminds me of, have you ever seen the movie Inception, where they're in the dream and the like reality kind of folds in on itself? That's also what it reminds me of. It looks like two mirror images that aren't quite the exact same. They're a little different, and they kind of fold in on each other. So anyway, I thought this was an interesting piece. It caught my attention, and so I wanted to point it out. If you'd like to see some more of Christina's work, it is up on the website. Sent quite a few pieces, so I put a bunch there, so you can go check that out. Thank you so much, Christina, for sending in some artwork and for participating so that I could do this and share some of this with some other people. So now that you've had some insight into my brain, you know why I need to find a new one. And so let me tell you who doesn't need to find a new brain. It's these people popping up on the screen right here. They're funding my brain transplant, or at least getting me a new sketchbook so I can put it up on the shelf and not lose my mind over this whole ordeal. So thumb up the video if you have irrational anxiety and you would like to start a support group for people like us. It's already here. You don't have to start it. It's this channel. We're all like this. You just have to join in. That's all. Alright, if you would like to join our community, go to illustrationsbypete.com. You can come in, you can put your own artwork on the site and promote it. You can find some inspiration in the free reference photos. You can just use them however you want in your artwork. You do not need to credit me. Or you can come into the forums and talk to some people and maybe give some advice and maybe find a little bit of information that helps you. So come check us out. Alright, that's about it for me. I'm going to go. I'll see you in the next one.